You know that weird moment with an AI tool? 1 second, it's working perfectly. The next, it just stops, fails completely. It really feels like the system just decided to change the rules on you. Well, in this explainer, we're going to get into why that's not what's happening. The AI didn't change the rules, you just hit a boundary. All right, so let's dig into that. The real head scratcher here is just how abrupt these failures are, right? You ask for something just a tiny bit more complex, and you don't get a slightly worse answer. You get nothing. The whole thing just breaks. So what is going on here? Okay, to really get this, we need to talk about an idea called the performance cliff. And it really boils down to the gap between what we think should happen and what actually happens. This right here, this is the core of the problem. It's our intuition versus the reality of the system. We expect a graceful decline. You make the task a little harder, the performance should dip a little bit. That makes sense to us. But what we get is sudden failure. It's not a slow degradation. The performance just drops off a cliff. And it's no wonder we think this way. Our whole lives, our intuition has been trained on gradual change. We see difficulty as a smooth slope. Think about it. If you're carrying a stack of books and someone adds one more, it gets a little heavier, sure. It's a bit harder, but you can probably still handle it. But here's the thing. The system isn't on a slope at all. It's more like it's on a big, flat plateau with a super sharp edge. It can work amazingly well, just perfectly, right up until that edge. And then one tiny step too far, and it's a sheer drop. That's the performance cliff. So why a cliff and not a slope? What's the reason for this? Well, the answer actually comes from a really cool concept in physics. It's called a change of state. Okay, so what's a phase transition? You already know this, actually. It's just the official term for when something abruptly shifts from one state to another. Think about ice melting into water, or water boiling into steam. And this idea, it gives us the perfect way to think about what's going on inside the AI. Let's use the classic example, boiling water. Imagine water at 99 degrees Celsius. It's super hot, yeah, but it's still 100% liquid water. Now, add just a tiny bit more heat, just 1 more degree, and bam! At 100 degrees, it instantly becomes steam, a totally different state with totally new rules. And here's the key thing to grasp. The change isn't gradual, it's discontinuous. The properties of hot water don't sort of slowly fade into the properties of steam. Nope. The system hits a very specific threshold, and in that instant, it undergoes a complete, fundamental change of state. So let's map this right back to our AI problem. Think of the complexity of your request as the temperature. The system's normal, successful behavior, that's the water. And that sudden point of failure, that's the boiling point. It's a performance boundary. The AI isn't just getting worse at the task. It's actually being pushed completely out of its normal operating state. There's even a mathematical term for this, called a limit. It's all about what happens when a function gets closer and closer to some specific value, to a boundary. Right about now, you're probably thinking, okay, but why build it like this? It feels like a bug, a real flaw. But it's actually not. It's a deliberate choice. And it's because, well, stability has a price. Yeah, that sudden failure, that whole performance cliff thing we've been talking about, it isn't a mistake. It's the result of a very fundamental design trade-off. So what is the trade-off? Well, what's gained is really high, really stable performance as long as you're within its limits. Inside that boundary, it's super predictable and reliable. But what's lost is any kind of smooth performance once you go beyond those limits. So, in short, the system trades a graceful failure for consistent, amazing performance. You see, the whole goal here is to make the system perform exceptionally well in one very specific state. It's not designed to be a jack of all trades that just kind of gets worse and worse. It's designed to be a specialist that is absolutely brilliant in its element and simply can't function outside of it. Okay, so let's bring it all back home. When we look at it through this lens, that original confusion, that feeling of what just happened, it actually starts to make a whole lot of sense. We went into it with our human intuition, right? And that intuition told us to expect a gradual decline. As the task gets harder, the results should get a little bit worse. We were looking for a slope. But the system was never on a slope to begin with. It was pushed across a hard, invisible boundary. It went through a phase transition. It wasn't trying harder and failing. It was just
forced into a different state where its internal rules for success just didn't apply anymore.
So here's the big takeaway. The system didn't just randomly change the rules on you. What happened was you unknowingly pushed it past one of its invisible boundaries. It didn't really break. It just entered a completely different phase. And that's why it behaved in that surprising way.